Yo, what is going on, guys? It's Leddy. Yo, welcome to So Serious Gaming. And today I want to speak to you guys and go over what I feel like this game could have been, what it should have been, and perhaps where they went wrong, where they could have done things better, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, just remember, guys, this is all my opinion. This is in no way me saying that this is exactly how it should have been, and this is the right way, and blah blah blah. This is just my opinion. Um, so yeah, if you remember, like looking way back, and I mean like way back before the game came out, you remember we all seen the trailers, we all seen this huge city. They showed two separate dark zones on separate islands, and they showed us so many things. And this wasn't really the kind of game that I'd usually play. Looter shooters were never my kind of thing. I've always been an FPS player, but when I seen this game and like the scope that they were showing us and all that kind of stuff, like I was super excited. Like, and this like whole setting of it, in sort of like a post-apocalyptic New York with this infection going round and all that, like the whole thing, it's just me. I love this kind of thing. I love that. Like, I love watching movies based around this and all that kind of stuff, and this was just me all over, man. So right from the outset, it just grabbed my interest, and when I played it, I was like, dude, I have never played anything like this game. Like, I was in the first beta. When I was playing through the story missions and things, right at the beginning of the beta, I was like, this is cool, man. This feels nice. But when I got into the DZ, I fell in love. Like, I've never played a game that has something like the DZ in it. That whole concept. I've never played a game like it, man. I absolutely loved it. It was like this whole kind of Wild West environment. There's no rules. You don't know who to trust. It was like a living, breathing world, because it's like everybody's in there. They've got their own intentions. Some people want to go and farm for gear. Some people want to go kill rogues. Some people want to go rogue. Some people want to hijack you at extraction. Some people want to gank you from behind. You don't know anybody's intention, and it was like a living, breathing world. It was like how I would expect the world to be in post. If we was to have an apocalypse and we had a few survivors left, kind of. That is exactly what I would expect. Is you don't know who to trust. You don't know where is safe. You don't know if you're going to be able to, say, get your loot out safely, because you don't know if there's people nearby, and if there is people nearby, are they friendly? Are they not friendly? And that to me was incredible. Now, with that in mind, for me, it is the dark zone that just that keeps me on this game. Without the dark zone as it is, like, I probably wouldn't put as much time into it as I do, if any at all, because I am a predominantly PvP player. And as far as PvP goes with this game, I love this whole environment, this whole setup of it. Now, I do feel like like I say, when you look back, I was expecting, two separate dark zones, two different areas in the city, and, it was going to be different. We were going to have all these different things, and I was hoping that that's what we were going to get, and I was hoping, when we didn't get that in the full game, I was hoping that maybe they would expand, and, that would be one of the expansions, and, that was a little bit of a disappointment for me, and I know that, like, throughout the lifetime of this game, that's been a disappointment for a good majority of the community. That's been one of the big complaints I've seen, is that the trailers and everything showed a lot more to this game than we actually ended up getting. Now, I know we didn't get the little drone things because they said the team that had the drone had a bigger advantage over those that didn't have the drone. So, I can understand why they would take that out, and I'm cool with that. I don't feel like I needed the drone to make my experience. Some people did, but I don't feel like it would have really benefited me in any way, because when I'm playing this game, I'm always on the game. I'm always, if I'm out and about, I'm too busy to be using the drone anyway. So I would never have got any use for that. I feel like this game is sometimes confused. It's like sometimes it wants to be a shooter, and then other times it wants to be an RPG. You have these two sides of the spectrum. You have people like me who enjoy the thrill of the firefights in these games. Anybody who watches my streams, you will see that we hold up somewhere, and if we have to, we'll run and then turn and burn, and we enjoy these epic firefights against multiple teams, just non-stop action, win or lose. that's our enjoyment. We like the odds being stacked against us in this Wild West environment that we have, and that's what we enjoy doing. But I feel like they could have done so much more for that. I mean, we had the 6DZs for so long, and there was no expansion to it. There was no real expansion to the map. It was just like little missions here and there. And one of the big failing points, in my personal opinion, was the DLCs. More importantly, the paid DLC. The paid DLC was so lackluster, it was unreal. I mean, we essentially paid for what were just another mission. That was more or less it. I mean, we got survival and we got a mission with it, but we got underground, which was basically just a handful of missions. It wasn't anything special. I felt like it was extremely underwhelming. I was expecting what they showed us in the trailer was what we was going to be getting in the expansions. Things that we were missing from the full game is what I expected in the expansions, and that for me was a huge letdown. And I feel like that was a big mistake on their part, because they advertised more than they actually offered us. And this is in no way me trying to have a go about Massive or belittle them or anything like that. This is just me giving an opinion on where the game kind of fell short, where it could have been done better. But, it also has its really good points. So, like I was saying, there's times where they talk about they want it to be a shooter. They want guns to be at the forefront of the action and things like that. But then there's other times where they come out and say, oh, but we want skills to deal a lot of damage, and we want that RPG feel to the game. And I feel like the developers are a little bit confused in what they want the game to be. And I think in part the biggest issue with that is the community. There's so many different sub communities within the Division community with all these conflicting opinions, and the problem is nobody's willing to, for the most part, accept other people's opinions. So everybody's vocal about when the game's not in the state that they want it to be in. The whole community is extremely vocal about it, that this isn't how I want it to be, we need it this way, and blah blah blah. And they kind of cater it to who's being the most vocal in the moment. And I feel like that holds the game back somewhat. I respect them for listening to the community. When people are being vocal, really vocal about things, like they do listen and they do make those changes, but it's not always the right changes, and I feel like that does hinder them at times. I feel like they need to take a step back, look at what people have said and say, right, is this actually the best way to do it? Maybe it's not a case of the idea itself is bad, but more the way that they execute the idea that isn't done properly. Sometimes it feels like they've just kind of seen the community say, we want skills to be really strong, and then they just make skills stupidly strong and insanely overpowered, and that kind of brings the game down a little bit. At the same time, they did the same with shotguns. They had the aim assist in 1.3. You had the whole aim assist, one shot to the head kind of aim snap thing, where the game would on console just basically auto aim to the head for you, and if you set your build up properly, you would guarantee a one shot every single time. And it's kind of like this whole thing of where people say they want something and they go too much into the extreme in regards to doing that. And I feel like that does hold the game back a little bit. I feel like the developers need to listen to the community, take the ideas that the community wants, but make sure that they use their minds, because at the end of the day, they are the game developers. They're the people behind the game, they're the people behind all the maths and all that kind of thing. And I feel like sometimes they kind of let their own common sense and common knowledge kind of disappear, and they let the community's voice overpower what they know they should be doing, if you know what I mean. Because the community is extremely vocal about it, and sometimes the community can be extremely vicious in the way that it puts it across. And I can imagine from their point of view, they feel the need that if we don't do this, people are going to be in uproar about it, and we're gonna get an absolute shitstorm thrown at us, and I feel like they just need to stand up and say, right, this is what we need to do. Also, another issue I feel like one of the biggest issues for me personally is throughout this whole time of the game, it has felt a little bit like a beta. In the sense that, not so much in the sense of bugs and things, because yeah, bugs happen. Granted, some of these bugs we've had have been absolutely game breaking. They have been, you know, utterly soul destroying, you know, for the game. Um, but you know, these things happen in, you know, modern times. The size of games that we have, you know, how technical they are, you know, the whole, like, this game is huge. There's so many different levels, you know. You've got underground levels, you've got up inside buildings, and you've got all the streets, and you know, all that stuff. And you know, for it to be the size that it is, and to have, like, you know, the PvE and the PvP running together like it does, and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, these bugs are to be expected. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, they could have handled the bugs a little bit better. And I don't feel like that's Massive's fault. A lot of people have to understand, you know, Massive is a new company. And I don't think they ever had the manpower to cope with a game this size, which is why you have different teams from different companies involved with different aspects of the game. So, you know, that's another issue. They needed the manpower that they didn't have to do the work that needed to be done. And, you know, from a developer standpoint, they have publishers over their shoulder, aka Ubisoft, or, you know, if it's, say, Call of Duty, they have Activision, or if it's Battlefield, they have EA, and they're always, you know, they're putting the pressure on to release DLC to make more money. You know, like now you've got all the emotes and things, and you know, they're having to push those out constantly because Ubisoft wants to keep making money. If Ubisoft isn't making money from this game, they'll no longer support it. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure on Massive, you know, that we need to get these new things out to keep people interested, keep money coming in, to keep our publishers happy. But if we do that, like, we can't have the manpower to put in and, you know, do bug fixes and things like that. So that's a big issue. And, you know, looking around, you see, you know, Massive have been advertising for staff a lot. So they're getting new staff, they've got new premises, you know, they've got a bigger premises, all that kind of stuff. So who knows? You know, Division 2 might have much more people involved, and maybe it will, I think they will learn. You know, this was a huge learning curve for them, so maybe they'll learn from it. I feel like with the DLCs, they could have given us a lot more. You know, and this is, again, you know, I feel like this is down to them being understaffed. I feel like this is them not having enough people involved with the game to get these things done. But I feel like the DLCs should have been an expansion on the world. So, like, what we're getting in 1.8, you know, a new section of the map unlocked. We've got new PvP mode. We've got the Horde mode. There's, like, elements of story add-ons in there. You've got, you know, skirmish as well. And, you know, all that stuff, like, I feel like that's what you should be getting in a DLC. You should be getting map expansions. You should be getting new parts of the world to explore, not just one or two missions, which is basically what most of a DLC was, you know? It was really lackluster, and I feel like we should have got a lot more than that for the game and what they advertised to us and everything else. But again, being understaffed and having the pressure of all these bugs that needed fixing, as well as trying to do the DLCs, is it really their fault? I don't know. You know, I'm not on the inside. I really don't know. My opinion is not so much. I feel like they were overworked, understaffed, overworked, and possibly underpaid. You know, who knows? That seems to be a common theory that's been going around recently. I've been seeing on, like, on Twitter and Reddit posts, is that, you know, a lot of people have been saying that they were understaffed, underpaid, and overworked. So if that is true, then you can kind of understand it. So I hope for the next game they have more people involved. One of the biggest issues with this game, and I think everybody will agree on this, is the servers. The servers are absolutely dreadful. Now, I'm not big on the whole kind of how servers work and all that kind of thing, but I feel like there wasn't enough money invested into the servers. I feel like they're running on cheap servers, if that makes sense. And, you know, that kind of causes these issues to happen. And that seems to be another common theory amongst a lot of people, is that they're running the cheap servers which just can't handle the workload involved to successfully run this game smoothly on, like online in the way that it needs to be run. So fingers crossed again for the next one, something can be done about that. But yeah, the reason I say that I feel like this game was a beta, like throughout its whole life, isn't so much for the bugs. It's all the changes we've had throughout this game. Now, if you look at the game when it first came out, loot was really hard to get, builds were extremely balanced, but then every single update after that has changed the whole way that the game works. You know how toughness scales. Toughness used to be health. Armor's changed. The way damage works has changed. Gear sets have changed. Talents have changed. There's been so many changes into the mechanics of this game that it has felt like a beta. We've got all these different changes happening all the goddamn time, that every update, it never feels like the same game. You feel like you're playing a new game. You're having to learn new mechanics and learn new ways that the maths has been done and all that kind of stuff. And I would only expect that to ever happen in a beta. I would expect them to have a set formula that they want for the game, but to then kind of expand on that formula, not change the formula around every single update. Because you would never, like, going back, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, you would never have had like toughness the way that it is now, because we didn't have toughness, it was health, and it would never look the way that it does with compared to how, say, your skill power and your firearms does. We've had armor where we were given more armor and then they stripped it all the way down and took us lower than we've ever had before. You've got talents such as critical save and booster shot that have, they've been nerfed around. They've been, all these things have been changed throughout the life cycle of this game, and it completely changes the whole mechanics and workings and, the formulas used with the maths and everything else. And I feel like they should have had a formula from the beginning that worked well and stuck with it. Now, one thing I will say is, like, the whole system started screwing up when gear sets came out. Now, that doesn't automatically mean gear sets were a bad idea. Excuse me, guys, I am full of cold at the moment. Gear sets were a really good idea. They added more versatility to the game. They brought, more builds to us. They brought more variety in squad composition, all that kind of thing. But that was when the issues really started to appear. Was when we had excuse me, was when we had all these gear sets coming out, all these different buffs, and it kind of screwed up the balance of the game a little bit. And that's when they started to change the formula. And again, I don't feel like gear sets were the issue, but they were kind of the cause of the issue, if that makes any sense. So, we had things like the Sentry meta, where it was Sentry AUG, and Sentry was meant to be used with marksman rifles, and people just used it with an AUG, because an AUG, you could just stack it instantly, give your whole team a huge buff, and, it was just everyone running around with AUG Sentries. So, they kind of should have, like, for me personally, I feel like when they give us a gear set, like they've done with Deadeye, that will only ever work with a marksman rifle. You will not be able to get that to work with any other gear set, And I feel like when they release these gear sets, if they're based for a specific weapon, it should only work with that weapon. So like Deadeye, the buffs on that will only work with a sniper rifle, but then you have the 6-piece Lone Star, which you can proc with an MP7 or an Elvoa or an M4 and, anything that's not an LMG or a shotgun, but yet the build, that gear set is focused around LMGs and shotguns. So rather than allowing these other guns to work with that gear set, they should make it where, okay, this is shotgun and this is LMG focused, so let's make sure that all the buffs only work with shotguns and LMGs. Make the builds focus to what you want them to be. Don't make the builds open up for everything, because that's when, you start having random issues appear and things like that. And it kind of, you get people that are using these gear sets with guns that weren't meant to be used with the gear set, if you get what I mean. And that, to me, takes away, diversity. Okay, we have build diversity in the game now, but one thing we are seriously lacking is weapon diversity. And that's another issue that I want to come on to now is weapon balance. This game is too heavily focused on burst damage, dealing as much damage as possible, which is why a lot of the slower firing weapons don't get used, because yes, they hit pretty much, they hit a little bit harder, but because of the fire rate, they have a longer time to kill. And I feel like that's why people are always using something like an MP7 or an Elvoa or an M4, because, in retrospect, they have the faster fire rate, and if you build them properly, you can give them the same, very similar damage output to the other weapons, but they shoot so much faster, so they take health a lot quicker, and the person, is less likely to get their heal off before they get to heal themselves. So I feel like they should be catering gear sets to specific guns. So, for example, Predator's Mark, they should make an assault rifle build, and then make Alpha Bridge an SMG build, because if you remember when Alpha Bridge was 6 talents, SMGs were really good. Now if they were to open it up to 6 talents and make it an SMG only build, so say, instead of it just having 5% damage for all weapons, give it however much damage towards SMGs only. And then you've got a build that'll cater to SMGs and allow it to have the 6 talents, because at the moment, I mean, yes, they're viable, but if you put an MP7 up against an Elvoa, and they have the exact same build, and except for one has assault rifle damage, one has SMG damage, 9 times out of 10, the Elvoa will win, because it shoots, pretty much just as fast as an MP7, but it hits a lot harder than an MP7, and it has a bigger magazine as well, so the person is less likely to need to reload than the person with the MP7 is. However, if you was to have the old school Alpha Bridge gear set, and it was just focused towards SMGs, and the person could have those 6 talents on there like we could before, that to me would set the SMGs in a really good place to go up against like an Elvoa or an M4, and you might get a bit more build diversity. But then as far as like the slower fire rate weapons go, I think you would want to be going a bit higher on the damage output. So even though they're hitting less bullets, it still has a similar time to kill as a gun that shoots a lot faster. At the moment, I don't feel like they're quite there. Yes, they do hit harder. There is a couple of thousand difference in damage on the guns, but I don't think it's enough of a difference to compensate the much slower fire rate that some of these guns have. There was a time where I would choose an AK over an M4 or an Elvoa. Now, not so much. I've tried it, and it doesn't work out as well as it does with an Elvoa. It just doesn't seem to stack up anymore. So I feel like they need to focus on the weapon balancing a lot more, scale the the damage compared to the fire rate more evenly, so that slower firing weapons can kill just as fast as a faster firing weapon, because that will bring in build diversity and weapon diversity. Again, that's one of our big issues. LMGs, I know in 1.8 are getting some love, and they need it, because LMGs, in my opinion, are still not quite there. Even with the full Lone Star set, the L86 or the MG5 can do work, but I still don't feel like they're quite up there yet. They're still not strong enough in comparison to the other weapons, so that's another thing we need. And one of my biggest issues right now with the game is they need to try and make sure that when they listen to people, they don't listen to a vocal minority. Because sometimes this has happened. Sometimes it's just been a small number of people that have just been extremely vocal about something that it seemed like 10 times more people have complained about it, and they need to do something. For example, defense. The shield, honestly, is not overpowered. It never was overpowered. A shield is not much of an issue. Me and my team, we see a shield, we surround the guy. We just rush on him, and we force him into a situation where he has no choice but to expose his back to at least one of us. They are really easy to deal with. If you're super aggressive on them, you can get over them nice and easy, honestly. They're not an issue at all. But yet, Massive felt the need to nerf the defense set when it didn't need it. It wasn't overpowered in any way at all. Luckily, it looks like in the PTS they're making some changes and actually giving it quite a big buff again. So, it will make it more viable for PvP. I mean, it's still viable. If you build it properly right now, you have very little difference into what it was like before the nerf to what it is now. So it's not too much of an issue. But I feel like that nerf happened because there was a minority of people that were complaining about it and said it needs nerfing, that they suddenly felt like they needed to nerf it. So I think they need to make sure that this is the right move, and it's not just a small number of people being extremely vocal that it sounds like everybody hates it. And that in part to me falls down to where the DZ is now failing. The DZ, like I said before, like I loved it because it was this whole Wild West thing. And you don't know who to trust, you don't know whether you're safe, whether you're not safe. Like if I'm solo or if I'm even with the team, I always PvP now. But when there's times where we can farm, even now I still passively farm and I still enjoy that thrill of extracting. Is somebody going to come to this while we're rogue? Am I going to live and get my loot out? Am I going to die and lose it? Especially if there's something in there I really want. When I'm solo, I tend to extract when I'm not rogue. But then, I get people come to my extractions and I get that nice feeling of, well, can I trust this guy? Is he just looking to get loot out himself? Is he looking to kill me for my loot? What's the deal, Because if there's something I really want to get out, I'm not going to do what I normally do and just shoot him on the spot and, just straight go PvP. I'm going to try and get my loot out first, minimize the risk of me losing it, and, then I'm happy to fight. And I feel like the way that it's going now is, a vocal minority of people have complained to the point where they need to give the Dark Zone padded walls. We need to give people a warning that we're about to go rogue. We need to remove friendly fire so that the 12, 16-man team can freely shoot through each other and, just focus fire on us and freely spam nades and not have to worry about anything. I mean, okay, the developers said the 4-man rogue team has the ability to nade spam and they get no repercussion for it. So we wanted to even the playing field. That's all well and good. If you're going against a 4-man team, it's balanced, right? But they're not going to be able to hurt each other anyway. So that's all well and good. But when you're going 4v12, 4v16, 4v20, and they have the opportunity to nade spam you, now you'll see here, we're going up against more than one team. And you will be able to see just how many grenades are coming in now. And can you imagine this? Look at how many grenades we have coming in, right? And could you imagine this scenario with no friendly fire, no reason for them to, not worry about crossing each other's line of sight and going rogue and all that kind of stuff? Because at the moment, that is, I feel, what holds them back. They're sat at the back. They're not worrying. Like they're worrying about going rogue and crossing each other's line of sight and all that kind of stuff. And they don't want to push because of it. Whereas now, it's not going to make any difference because they don't have to worry about going rogue, and they can just push. They can cluster fuck in amongst each other, and they're never going to go rogue. They're just going to be able to be super aggressive, focus fire like crazy, nade spam like crazy, not afterward, and I'm not looking forward to that. Then on top of that, Banshee, bearing in mind, Banshee was already pretty strong. They got 10% to targets out of cover, they got an initial 10% to damage to rogues, and if they die to a rogue, they get an extra 10%. So that's 30% damage on a rogue player. And most people will run out and they will purposely die to a rogue before shooting back, so they can come out with that buff. They now want to give Banshee an extra 5% damage for each manhunt level. So that's up to, you got 5 manhunt levels, 5% for each manhunt level. So if you get to level 5 manhunt, if somebody on the other side is using a 6-piece Banshee, he's going to get that initial 30% damage on you, plus an additional 25% damage because you're a manhunt rank 5. That's 55% damage to a rogue. Where's the logic, man? We could be, that could end up being like 12 to 16 people using that gear set, all dealing 55% damage to us, just because we're rogue. And that's before you take into account things like responsive, competent, unforgiving, You know, all the damage buffs that you get on weapons as well, like, you know, that's before you take into account all those things as well. There's a potential there for like 85% extra damage when you take into account all these different buffs, if not more. It could even be more than that. But that's a lot of damage to deal, and I feel like this is only happening because, you know, there's a specific group of people being extremely vocal about it, that they feel like they need to do this. And for me personally, from a personal standpoint, from what I've seen between the time to kill and these changes that they want to happen and everything else, like, to me it feels like the DZ is headed in a bad direction, man. The DZ keeps me gripped to this game. If they kill the DZ, I don't get as much enjoyment from it as I would like to. I don't get enough enjoyment from it to feel like I need to be staying here and playing the game anymore. So I feel like they need to be careful on how they listen to people and how they implement certain changes. But yeah, guys, I know this was a little bit of a long one. There is so much more I could say, honestly, man. I could go on and on and on for a good hour or so with all the different things I feel like this game could do, but I wanted to kind of focus on the main things that I feel like this game fell short on, where it could have improved, but kind of also give you, let you guys kind of understand what makes me love this game, like what makes me want to play this game at the same time. Because don't get me wrong, this is, like I said before, this is not me hating on the game, this is not me hating on Massive. I love this game, I love the concept of it, and that's why I come back to it, and this is why no other game that I have played grips me enough to draw me away from this game. But I feel like they could have done so much better with it, and I just kind of wanted to break down where I feel like they went wrong, where I feel like they could have improved on it. And like I said, this is just my opinion. This is not me saying this is how it should have been. This is not me saying that my opinion is fact or anything like this. This is just my opinion. As always, guys, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments, man, because this is a lot longer than I would normally do for a video, but like I said, there's a lot to be said. Let me know in the comments below, guys, if you agree, do you disagree, how do you feel the game went wrong, where do you think it went right, or, all the usual stuff, man. Just let me know in the comments below, because I enjoy that kind of interaction with you guys. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and yeah, you guys have a wonderful day, man. And remember, guys, when the salt starts flowing, just ask them, why so serious?